Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 700 Club. Perhaps you're affected by this latest winter storm dumping major snowfall from the Midwest to the mid-Atlantic states. The storm is also bringing sleet, freezing rain, and frigid temperatures, making for very dangerous travel conditions.
Well, parts of Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina are getting several inches of snow. Here in Virginia, we have about 8 inches so far. Brody Carter reports.
So much for an early spring. Here in Virginia Beach, snowfall. And it's the epicenter of what's expected to be one of the largest storms of the season. Joining me now, Fox Weather's Ian Oliver. Ian, what do you have to say about this?
Man, people are asking tough questions about the groundhog now. Zero affiliation with the groundhog. But yeah, this is a place, I mean, they only average about a half of snow, Virginia Beach, in any given season. The past 2 years, this much snow.
Yes.
Zero measurable.
Zero accumulation.
There's already been about half a foot so far this year. 6 to 10 inches of snow in the forecast for this one. I think we're standing in the sweet spot.
Winter Storm Kingston is blanketing at least 10 states with snow and bitter cold.
I do have the wine, and I've just got to put the pajamas on, and that's what it's going to be.
That's wonderful.
Virginia Beach and the Hampton Roads area have already been buried under 10 inches of snow, with more expected. For a region that rarely sees accumulation, this storm is making history.
It is just something you don't see every day. It's palm trees and sand and snow all over the place.
I actually came here to report live for my high school newspaper on the storm. I mean, it's amazing. There's so much snow. You know, we haven't had this much snow in 15 years, so it's huge.
Whiteout conditions closing down Interstate 64, with traffic snarls and big rig slide-offs spotted from the Midwest to the Mid-Atlantic.
I'm thinking weeks. Yeah. I really do. There's that much.
Oswego County, New York is so buried that snow removal teams are running out of space to pile it.
We're doing the best we can with what we have.
Their governor declared an emergency over the lack of rock salt to thaw the roads. Meanwhile, in Tennessee, power customers are being asked to voluntarily reduce their electricity usage to lessen the strain on the power grid. This after the Midwest was hit up to a foot of snow. The state of Kentucky is reeling after devastating floods killed at least 14 people. Now having to dig out of half a foot of snow.
The main thing is God. God's getting us through it. No doubt that He's with us.
Back here in Virginia Beach, in a city that hasn't seen any snowfall over the past 2 years, overnight totals proving that this storm is really the most significant weather event in recent memory. I'm Brody Carter, CBN News.
Thank you, Brody. You can see Brody reporting from right outside our studio at the end, and I had a tough walk around the building today it's very unusual what we've experienced here with the amount of snowfall. That snow, it was so fluffy. I tried to make a snowball, and I was unsuccessful.
No
very
building
unusual.
A snowman for you.
No, very unusual we've experienced here.
Good for snow angels, though.
That is
the fluffy
true.
Stuff.
That was you out there, then, I guess.
That was me.
So you're a Wisconsin native.
I am.
How does this compare? This was a real deal around here.
Yeah, this is typical in Wisconsin. Not every day, but you know, it wouldn't be surprising to have this happen. The difference is, you know, you don't have the same kind of amount of equipment. The salt that usually goes down up north, I think, is a little different consistency. So it's going to take a little while for everybody to get back to normal here.
And this is when it gets dangerous, too.
Yes. Well, now they're saying freezing, so got to watch for that.
Temperatures rise, it freezes up, so please, please be careful. Yeah. In other news, the Department of Government Efficiency is setting its sights on the Pentagon. Gary Lane has that story for us. Gary?
That's right, Andrew. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is telling officials to come up with a plan to cut 8% of the defense budget. He's also reportedly set to remove some top generals and senior officials. This as DOJ staffers have been at the Pentagon this week, combing through lists of probationary workers. About 878,000 civilians work at the Defense Department, with 60,000 of them probationary. Civilian defense contractors could also be on the chopping block. DOJ posts a list of more than 1,000 contracts it claims to have terminated. While the White House is looking to cut fat at the Pentagon, Republicans in Congress are seeking to increase the defense budget. Lawmakers agree the military should target waste, but they also believe America isn't spending enough on national defense. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke tells us more.
GOP lawmakers are behind this push in growing America's defense capabilities, citing the importance of using strength to deter enemies amid growing global threats.
We need to make that investment as a country because the name of the game is keeping peace. The name of the game is avoiding war and having our allies and our friends out there also avoid war. But we do that by being strong, and we do that by investing in defense.
U.S. defense spending is currently at the lowest level since World War II.
This is not enough to deter our enemies. Just look at the consequences of underfunded and uncredible American deterrence over the last 4 years. The Taliban retook Afghanistan. Russia launched a full-scale invasion of its neighbor. Iran and its proxies perpetrated the worst attack on Israel since the Holocaust.
Congressman Mike Rogers believes defense spending needs to be at 5 to 6% of the country's gross domestic product, a number retired Army General Jack Keane supports, while adding more money must be accompanied by reform.
We have to fix our business practices in the Pentagon, and we have to hold the Pentagon, responsible and accountable for that. And we certainly have to fix how we do business with the defense industrial base and also with our own organic industrial base. And I think the Congress has to take a tough look at itself in terms of how it does business with the Pentagon.
Meanwhile, Representatives Jen Kiggins and Sanford Bishop, a Democrat, relaunched the bipartisan Military Family Caucus, focusing on the home front as part of the overall defense effort.
We did a lot of good work last Congress, and we had 31 amendments that came out of the House. 29 of them passed out of the Senate to the tune of about $5 billion. But Congress really listened, and we put our money where our mouth is, and we're working on improvements. But the Family Caucus that we are now starting up for this Congress is important to me because it will allow for a vehicle to follow up.
With Republicans holding slim majorities on the Hill, House members hope to push through a new budget resolution, which would include $100 billion in additional defense funding. Senate leaders, meanwhile, are calling for a $150 billion increase. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
A new round of verbal sparring in the war of words between President Trump and Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky. In a social media post, Trump criticized Zelensky for not holding elections, referring to him as, quote, a dictator without elections. Zelensky better move fast or he's not going to have a country left. Zelensky says the president is repeating Russian talking points, responding, with all due respect, President Trump unfortunately lives in a disinformation space. All of this comes as the Trump administration seeks to renew relations with Russia and broker an end to the war in Ukraine. Republicans are divided over the outreach to the Russian leader.
Vladimir Putin is a gangster. He's a gangster with a black heart. He makes Jeffrey Dahmer look like Mother Teresa.
President Trump ran on the idea of bringing peace, and that's what he's going to deliver.
U.S. and Russian negotiators are hoping to set up a summit between the two leaders in the near future. Well, turning now to Israel, where the nation is in mourning. The bodies of 4 hostages kidnapped on October 7th have been returned. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, today's exchange is the most heart-wrenching yet.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressed the soul of the country.
The
heart of the entire nation is torn. My heart is torn. Yours too. And the heart of the whole world needs to break, because here we see who we are dealing with, what we are dealing with, monsters. We grieve. We are in pain. But we are also determined to ensure that something like this does not happen again.
The Red Cross picked up the bodies from Hamas and brought them to the Israel Defense Forces. While the remains will be tested for forensic identification, it's expected the 4 victims include Sherry Bibas, her 4-year-old son Ariel, 9-month-old son Kafir, and 84-year-old Oded Lifshitz.
It's so different from all the other hostage releases that we've had so far. You know, every time in the ceasefire, we've had about 5 or 6 rounds now, and the first few were marked with abject euphoria. This time, Israeli media chose to respect the privacy of the hostages that we presume are coming back today. The atmosphere was very different. It's also raining today, so it just feels like, it just goes with the general mood here.
Earlier in an event attended by hundreds of men, women, and children, Hamas and other terror groups brought out the caskets. Al Jazeera interviewed those who claim they were the kidnappers. Hamas claims that IDF bombs killed the 4, but autopsies will be performed to reveal how they died. Israeli President Isaac Herzog said these next few days will be heart-wrenching for Israelis.
These are days of a wake-up call, not just for our nations, but for the entire family of nations. In the face of this evil, led by the evil Iranian regime and its proxies, we must stand together resolutely, firmly, and courageously.
Thousands of Israelis gathered at Hostage Square while U.S. lawmakers reacted to the deaths. The cold-blooded murder of an infant is as barbaric a crime against humanity as one can commit, wrote Representative Richie Torres. Representative Dan Crenshaw said, if Hamas ever invaded the United States and kidnapped and killed American toddlers, we would never stop hunting them down. And yet the world acts baffled that Israel went to war over this. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Andrew, this is heart-wrenching to think dead babies in exchange for terrorists.
Yeah, and Representative Crenshaw certainly gave us perspective and got it right. If Hamas ever invaded the U.S., and you may think it's not possible, but if they did, if they invaded and kidnapped, abducted, and murdered children, the response from the United States would be strong and swift. But when Israel responds, the world kind of shrugs. Makes me think of Jeremiah 31 this morning, the verse, a voice is heard of mourning and weeping for children who are no more. Hamas evidently has been reduced in numbers, but to see them massed, carrying caskets, still sends a disturbing message to the world. Please pray for Israel and its people today.